Alright, what is good, y'all? It's your boy EzReactz. What is good, y'all? It's your boy EzReactz. Yo, what is good, y'all? It's your boy Ez, and I'm back with another reaction. And today we're gonna be reacting to. Yo, what is good, y'all? It's your boy EzReactz. And today we're reacting to ranking every version of Rick Grimes, the GOAT. And make sure y'all like and subscribe. All my shout out, Theo Hunt. I mess with your videos. Appreciate you for commenting on my video, one of my reactions. Hey, I appreciate you, gang, bro. Let's keep going. Let's get it.
Rick Grimes is one of the greatest characters in fiction, but today
Yes,
I thought
sir.
we'd delve into every
The greatest.
version we see of him throughout the Walking Dead universe and rank them all. Now, I'd quickly like to say to make this list.
I ain't gonna lie, we haven't watched The Walking Dead yet. Something's wrong with you. The best TV series you will ever watch, if you really pay attention.
I'm going to say Rick has to have appeared for more than 5 minutes across a season, so we aren't here all day. This rule therefore counts out his cameos in Season 4 and 8 of Fear the Walking Dead, the flashback in Daryl Dixon Season 2, his voiceover in Dead City Season 1, and his cameos in Season 10 and 11 from the main show. But okay, without further ado, let's get straight into ranking every
let's get it, y'all.
version of Rick Grimes.
Season 7.
Coming in dead last as the worst version of Rick Grimes is Season 7. Now, I'd like to preference this ranking is not based on Rick's post-apocalyptic skills or leadership qualities.
Yeah, that's when Negan, I think so. Negan came into play. After that, bro, yeah, he was lost, bro. He basically couldn't even do anything for real.
It's purely based on my opinion of how good not just Andrew Lincoln's
That's the worst I've ever seen Rick,
season,
to be honest.
but how engaging and enjoyable the character is to watch. Season 7 Rick isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, he's still superb in this season. But I think I just enjoy this version of him the least. Now, Rick as a character had always remained, well, relatively stable, but in Season 7 we see him psychologically shattered by the introduction of Negan after the deaths of Glenn and Abraham. While narratively intentional, this downfall stripped him of the very traits that made him a compelling...
Hey, Negan is a GOAT too, don't forget about him, bro. He's one of the villains, but he's a GOAT at the same time. Like, he didn't get he didn't care about anybody. He'll kill anybody. RP Abraham or RP fucking Gwen, bro.
Resilient
Glenn,
leader,
bro.
resulting in a season where Rick felt lost, broken, and largely ineffective. Now, I actually think AMC made the right call here. It was refreshing to see his character broken down at the hands of a new villain, and it not only showed the
it's like he never seen that before.
To progress Rick's character arc. So why have I put this version of him in dead last then? Well, the introduction of Negan causes Rick to submit and mope about, a very natural reaction to seeing two of your closest friends beaten to death in front of you by a bat. But that being said, it doesn't make...
Hey, in the comments down below, when that part when Negan went crazy, who two people did y'all think, do y'all think that should have been killed rather than Abraham and Glenn? Let me know down below. Who would y'all pick?
The greatest TV, when stretched out over 16 episodes especially. Look, I know Rick starts to fight back towards the end of Season 7, but we still have to watch this almost unrecognisable version of Rick for around 13 hours. For example, in a movie, if a scenario like this happened to another protagonist, we might watch them break down and become a shell of their former self for maybe 30 minutes maximum. Likewise, for most other TV shows, an event like this would last a few episodes. But here, this complete and emotional psychological collapse of our main character lasts for the majority of the season, and quite frankly, I just got a bit bored of it. Now, obviously, my critique here is all from a writing perspective, as Andrew Lincoln does a phenomenal job of selling us this emotional train wreck version of Rick. And don't get me wrong, there are some truly amazing and beautiful scenes within this season of television. such as his dynamic with Negan, particularly in the season opener, and of course his heartbreaking conversation with Michonne about Glenn's death. Season 7 was bold. It aimed to shift the tone of the
Why
show to a
Glenn,
much bleaker
bruh?
one,
Could
and it
be anybody
definitely
else.
succeeds. But especially binging this season of television nowadays, it all just feels a bit depressing. And seeing Rick stripped of all purpose and power,
Yeah,
although
that's
engaging
why
at
people
first,
fucking
does start to wear thin
don't
towards the
watch it no
later
more.
half of Season 7. So
Like
for those
around
very
season
reasons,
7.
Season 7 Rick is coming in dead last.
Yeah, he was literally like down bad, like all the way down.
Rather fittingly,
Season 8.
Season 8 is coming straight after. Following the collapse of Rick in Season 7, the all-out war storyline was a tantalising concept of a return to form for our protagonist. But in reality, what we got was the most erratic, inconsistent, unhinged version of Rick we'd ever seen. Now, my main problem with this season is Carl's death, right? Carl was consistently Rick's
R.P.
reason
Carl,
to keep
bro.
going in this chaotic world, and every decision he made
Like,
was
supposed to be
try
the
and
other
bring a
way
better
around,
life
bro.
for his
Not
son. And after the perplexing
Carl,
decision
bro.
to kill off Carl Grimes by the writers, Rick just doesn't really have any motivations anymore. He loses his reason, and dare I say, he becomes a tad bit one-dimensional for the majority of this season. And although this season does have some saving graces like the episode Wrath, and
You know the crazy thing about it? If Carl wouldn't have died, would have Rick killed Negan at the end?
his battle
I need to
with
think about
morality and
that.
keeping
Think
it
about that.
together, but it's how the writers treated Rick's arc in this season which sometimes bug me. Firstly, Carl's death was meant to serve as Rick's emotional turning point. No matter how stupid a decision it was, it served as a wake-up call to rebuild a better future.
Yep.
But Rick largely ignores Carl's dying wishes throughout the season. I mean, the show tells us that Carl is supposed to be this moral compass, even though he has a sudden epiphany after trying to kill Negan himself that feels incredibly rushed. But for the most part, Rick just ignores these wishes. He slaughters probably hundreds of saviors throughout Season 8, and only decides to end the cycle of violence in a poetic finale.
Like he
which
did
was
all
essentially
that
the only way the writers could figure out how to keep Jeffrey Dean
for no reason,
in the
basically.
show. My point here is Rick's character arc feels manipulative this season, using Carl's death for shock and emotional weight, but not allowing it to meaningfully reshape Rick until it's convenient for the story's conclusion is just a bit annoying. Also, in earlier seasons, Rick's tactical mind and internal conflict gave him complexity as a character, but here the writers reduce him to just a rage-fueled protagonist hellbent on revenge for large portions of the season. Look, I get it, Rick's lost his son, and he reacts like maybe any other father would in the setting of an apocalypse, but Rick should have come to the conclusion of sparing Negan naturally, without Carl dying. As in the show, it just feels like an impulsive decision rather than a mindset he'd adopted. That being said, Season 8 does have some amazing scenes, and Andrew Lincoln's performance in terms of acting might arguably be the best in the entire series. So those are the reasons I prefer this version of Rick slightly more to his Season 7 counterpart, but due to the inconsistencies in his character arc, and Rage Rick just becoming a bit boring after a period of time, Season 8 Rick is still coming in second to last.
Season 9.
Now, every other version of Rick from here on up is a massive step up, in my personal opinion, from Season 8.
Yeah, Season 9. He definitely like. He was like chilled and stuff. He wasn't fucking acting crazy and stuff.
7 and 8. I mean, they're good, but from here on out, we are getting into brilliant and perfection territory. But purely due to his lack of screen time, only appearing in 5 episodes, Season 9 has to take this spot. After a massive time jump, we see a now mature Rick finally processing Carl's dying wish in a meaningful way. He has all the communities working together somewhat effectively, and stands out as a figurehead in rebuilding society. And I love this version of Rick Grimes, even if it's only very brief. After 2 very violent seasons, it's a refreshing change of pace, and his journey shifts the tone from survival into rebuilding. On top of this, Rick's final episode, in quotation marks, is one of the best in the entire show. Rick begins the series in Season 1 as a man desperate to find his family and restore order. But over time he becomes a warrior, a leader, a killer, and a very broken man.
Be honest, bro. Everybody is a killer, bro. If you kill a person, you ain't gotta be a walker. If you kill like a person or like people, you're a killer.
But in Season 9, he's someone trying to reclaim his humanity. And what comes after as an episode threads all of the phases of Rick Grimes together perfectly. His hallucinations show him walking through memories, losses, and lessons, forcing him to confront who he's been and who he still is. And in the end, he sacrifices himself for the greater good, choosing others over himself, which is the ultimate act of growth and leadership. And I absolutely love that they revisited his relationships with Herschel, Shane, and Sasha, giving
Oh
us
yeah, that
all
was
an
nice
insight
too.
into his
Yeah, that was
psyche
nice.
at that period of time. These are
Yeah, I forgot about Herschel, bro. And everybody else that died at that point. That's why I love The Walking Dead, bro. Like you get connected with all these fucking characters, like you really them for real. Like it's like a realistic show, basically. That's what I like about it.
Ones that made the show so riveting in the early days, so that sense of nostalgia just hits different here. However, I do largely think this season in terms of highlights for Rick Grimes is carried by a single episode. Look, it did feel a bit abrupt having a huge time jump from Season 8, and we don't see many of the dynamics that made Rick such a compelling character for all of these years. Albeit that is largely down to the low episode count he appears in, but they are still missing for large parts of this season. One character we do see him with though is of course Daryl Dixon, one of TV's most heartwarming.
Yes, sir. Don't forget about Daryl, bro. He's one of the people.
Friendships, as the scene with them both stuck in the pit and Daryl desperately trying to save Rick are both amazing. This version of Rick Grimes might be a tad bit too idealistic, especially compared to the last time we saw him in Season 8. I mean, the show cuts out a huge chunk of his character development, but the performance from Andy, the nostalgia this season gives, and the fact he just has the most poetic ending ever, means it has to rank above Season 7 and 8.
Shame, bruh.
But due to his limited screen time, I can't rank it any higher than this.
Fine.
The ones who live.
After 6 long years away, in May of 2024, AMC released The Ones Who Live, a 6-episode miniseries centered around Rick Grimes. Now, although the storyline and pacing of The Ones Who Live may be far-fetched and incredibly rushed, the writers managed to do a phenomenal job with Rick himself. We really get a deep dive into the trauma of Rick Grimes, something he's carried since Season 1.
Yep.
The themes of depression, suicide, and loneliness are all...
Hey, don't sleep on this too. The Ones Who Live is up there too. That's good. And don't forget about Daryl's fucking show. Daryl Dixon. He got his own with Carol. I watched both of them. Both of them fire.
all sides to Rick that we'd never really seen before, but they are explored in depth in this series, which was fascinating as the character of Rick Grimes is often put on a pedestal of resilience and showing no emotion, so it felt incredibly raw as these mental battles would be a proper struggle in the apocalypse. I also love the reunion with Michonne, and the fact their love story drives the narrative forward is a big bonus. Andrew Lincoln and Denai Guerrera's on-screen chemistry is amazing, and
they got the best chemistry, bro. They picked the best actors for this show. I cannot imagine anybody else act as Rick and Michonne. Perfect.
Glad we got to see them together again after all these years. But a special shout out has to go to Rick's monologue about family in episode 1, his interaction with...
You know what's crazy about it though? At this point right here, he wasn't even trying to go back, bro. And basically, Michonne had to force him to like go back to his family. That's the crazy part.
In episode 6 and Rick and Michonne's argument in the apartments in episode 3. Say what you want about the show itself, but one thing it did incredibly well was bringing back one of the most iconic characters in fiction. It's vintage Rick Grimes in a setting with the CRM a formidable foe for 5 of the 6 episodes, and the cherry on top is how it all ties back to Carl Grimes. Again, this only ranks here because there's only 6 episodes, and much like Season 9 we miss out a whole load of context, but this version of Rick is emotionally vulnerable, whilst also being insanely cool. I mean, he cuts off his own hand,
Yeah,
for God's sake. And
Rick
yes, the whole
Rick is
final
different.
act of this show is incredibly goofy, but again, that's to do with the overall story, not Rick Grimes as a character. So for those reasons, The Ones Who Live Rick is coming in at 6th place.
Alright, what's next? Season 3.
Fresh off the death of his former best friend and the fall of Herschel's farm, Season 3 Rick had truly transformed.
This
I
is
love
at the
this version of Rick for
prison.
many of the reasons I enjoyed him in The Ones Who Live, and it's this emotional vulnerability. Whilst Rick appears stronger than ever on the outside, Season 3 delves into the internal collapse of the character, especially after the death of his wife Laurie.
Oh, no, no.
And his reaction isn't rage or grief in a conventional sense, but instead Rick unveils psychologically his
Ain't gonna lie. Y'all gonna probably hate me on this, bro. Lori, I didn't really care about her. And nowhere near as close as Rick. Like, she wasn't really like excited to watch. She was just alright.
hallucinations of Laurie's ghost and the imaginary phone calls on the
But RP
prison phone
Lori though.
reveal a man on the brink of mental breakdown, unable to process the weight of his perceived failures as a leader. Now this season is absolutely vital in Rick's transformation into the survivor he would go on to become. And all of this emotion coincides with the introduction of the first...
Hey, let me know that down below. What was the best, like, spot that was in? Like, was it... First it was like, season 1, they was like in the woods and stuff. And it was like the CDC. And then it's like, the barn, and then it was the like what place was like the best spot that they should have stayed at.
true antagonist in the entire series, that of course being the Governor. Now the Governor serves as a dark mirror of what Rick could become if he fully gave into fear and tyranny, and their contradicting leadership styles and moral boundaries heighten the narrative stakes and force Rick to confront what kind of man he wants to be in this brutal world. Season 3 is just an
The
overwhelming
Governor,
time for our group,
the
but
first villain.
especially Rick. His wife dies, Carl starts going off the rails, they have conflict with Woodbury, and he has a newborn baby. It's a brutal depiction of survival in this world, and it feels so raw and real. But despite all of this, Rick still isn't fully ready to embrace this world, as part of him clings on to morals and what's right, as he tries his utmost to set the best possible example for his son Carl. Rick's dynamics in this season are also superb. It's the first real season we see Rick and Daryl becoming true friends. We see Herschel take on this parental role within his life, and of course his incredibly intense interactions.
You know what's crazy? Rick is a lightsaber too. If he would have cut Herschel's leg off, bro, it would have been done. Herschel would have been dead. It's the crazy part.
Governor. It's a fascinating season of television, with that emotional complexity combined with excellent writing.
And luckily, that worked too. Cutting, like, you cut stuff off, and he still won't die. Turn into like a walker. You cut it fast enough.
Performance by Andrew Lincoln, Scott Wilson, and Norman Reedus. It makes Season 3 Rick one of the most layered and unforgettable variations of the character. And the fact I've said all of this, and it doesn't even touch the top 3 in this list in terms of my ranking, is a testament to just how amazing Rick Grimes is. So it's probably around now you're wondering, well, why rank this season so low? Firstly, not only does it show how good he is in other seasons, but put very simply, Rick's transformation from breakdown back to functioning leader feels rushed at times, and we don't see how he truly overcomes his trauma, and it's almost just left to our own imaginations.
Yep, you be
On top of this,
seeing Lori every second. Yeah.
despite it being probably the most Rick-centric season bar season 1 of the show, him and the main villain in this season don't really have a true one-on-one encounter other than that one meeting in the barn, which was a controlled environment. Meaning, other than Rick's early on antics that involved clearing the prison, killing Thomas, and the siege on Woodbury, we don't actually see much Rick Grimes action. But my biggest complaint with Season 3, actually I call it more of a nitpick, but still, Season 2 ends with the infamous Ricktatorship. But I feel like Rick barely even enforces this fact on screen. After Laurie's death in the episode Killer Within, which is episode 4, we just see Rick break down, then Season 3 ends with him getting better and suddenly welcoming the Woodbury survivors into the prison, abandoning his Ricktatorship stance without us truly seeing what that really meant. As most of the season he was either having an emotional breakdown and not leading, or he's just abandoning the whole idea altogether. But look, Rick is phenomenal in this season, and it's the first true signs we get that he's morphing into a different person, one who is very much at home in the apocalypse.
Season 6.
Season 6 Rick is a different beast. This is a man who now calls the apocalypse home, and this is demonstrated firsthand by his plan to preemptively kill the saviors. This moral shift is compelling because it asks viewers, how far is too far in the name of survival? His actions create real tension with other characters, like Morgan for example, forcing the audience to question whether Rick is becoming a necessary realist or a complete monster. And this is all contradicted with the existence of the Alexandrians. In terms of physical capabilities, Season 6 Rick is right up there with the best, from organising the Walker Quarry operation.
Yeah, he's on this A game this season.
Preparing Alexandria for what's to come. This is a man who now knows what he's doing in the apocalypse. And this season does a phenomenal job at using the character of Morgan Jones to demonstrate to us just how far Rick Grimes has come.
Bro, Morgan been here for the beginning, bro. RP Dwayne, bro. Crazy how they found each other again, bro.
Hopeful sheriff we saw in Season 1. And I know some people aren't a fan, but his relationship with Michonne I think was done really well, and it just further added to the character's emotional depth. A quick mention also has to be given to the episode No Way Out, which is one of the best episodes in the entire series, as Rick proves he would risk anything for his children. I mean, this guy is Father of the Year.
Yep.
Scrap that. Maybe even the decade.
This is when everybody came out to help. Fucking. That was like at least like 1,000 zombies. Fucking killed all of them. Yeah, everybody was going crazy.
Carl's gunshot wound to the eye, we proceed to get probably the most badass scene ever. As Rick, hatchet in hand, steps out to slaughter
famous scene.
Hundreds of zombies as a horde now in.
He just had an axe too. Yeah, he's different, bro.
I love how the writers make Rick increasingly more paranoid and mistrustful, as at this point he's dealt with Shane, Woodbury, Terminus, and
he dealt with so much stuff. Yeah.
On his quest for survival, and they all serve as reminders for just how brutal this world can be. Rick's a flawed character in Season 6, but that's what makes him so compelling. I love the riveting questions he poses to the audience about how far you would go to survive, and his relationship with his post-apocalyptic family is just heartwarming. This is a formidable apex predator in the landscape of the apocalypse, and it is up there amongst the very best variations of this character. My only nitpicks with Season 6 Rick is he can come off, albeit most likely intentional, as a bit arrogant, which can make him hard to root for at times. And there are also these small stretches throughout Season 6 where Rick's character arc feels stagnant. But altogether, this season is a fascinating insight into the mindset of Rick, and the contrast from total control in Episode 1 to seeing Rick totally submit for the first time in the entire show at the hands of Negan is so powerful. So for those reasons, Season 6 Rick is taking my 5th spot on this list.
Season 4.
Just missing out on the top 3 is Season 4 Rick. Now we see two vastly different sides to the character in only 16 episodes. We start off the season with Farmer Rick, someone who is just a bit sick of all the senseless violence in this world, as he starts to focus on long-term survival and being a good dad. Instead of teaching his son how to kill, Rick begins teaching him how to live, how to grow crops.
This is when like the sickness started season.
Find peace, an important lesson in this increasingly violent world. But the resurgence of the governor and the flu outbreak within the prison force Rick to slowly re-engage with the harsh realities
like,
he tried.
You really can't have a regular fucking life in this world like that without, it gotta be at least something. Disease, people, walkers, everything.
So hard to avoid. His decision to exile Carol rather than execute her, for example, shows that whilst he softens, he's still wrestling with the difficult leadership decisions. And by the time the government
which I would have
attack...
executed Carol for what she did, which I'll just let her go like he did.
The prison, Rick is forced to reclaim his role as the group's protector, leading to a compelling arc where he must once again pick up the gun he tried so hard to lay down. And the heartbreaking death of Herschel changes Rick forever. Herschel was more than just a friend to Rick, he was a mentor, a guide, and a symbol of peace. And this is a character that had urged Rick to step away from brutality to raise Carl as a boy rather than a soldier, and his death shatters all hope for a period of time. And the second half of the season, we see a broken
Imagine
Rick
if Herschel was still here, bro. Rick would be a whole different person. Some of the things he would have done, because Herschel would have been by his side.
Anything to protect his family. Rick, Carl, and Michonne are so compelling as a group in the later episodes as we watch their journey to Terminus, with the standout moment in this season, of course, being in the season finale, in which Rick kills Joe by inviting out
that part right there. Yeah, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen him do in this whole show. He would do anything, like literally anything, just to live. Okay, what it is, to keep his family safe, keep his people safe. Cannot blame him though. I'll probably do the same thing, ain't gonna lie.
In one of the most graphic scenes in the entire show, but whilst brutal, it confirms that Rick will do anything to protect the people he loves, even if it means becoming a monster. But very crucially, this is not the same rage-driven man from Season 3, it's a Rick who understands the cost of violence and chooses it only when pushed to the very brink. Season 4 is very much a transition period.
People die, and then he did.
In the narrative and for Rick Grimes as a character, but the writers do such a phenomenal job with handling both scenarios. His dynamic with Carl, Michonne, and Herschel are some of the best in the show's history, and his speech to the governor is incredibly powerful. And you get all of this mixed in with the birth of Murder Jacket Rick, and it's a perfect concoction. In fact, I actually ranked this version of Rick as my favourite at first, as I absolutely love the contrast between him from episode 1 all the way to episode 16. However, upon a recent rewatch of season 4, I realised that you actually don't see a whole lot of him in this season. Thanks to the introduction of fragmented storytelling, Rick is totally absent from over 25% of the season's episodes. That's 6 episodes he just flat out doesn't appear in at all. So then naturally, I was forced to change my list. This is arguably my favourite version of Rick Grimes as a character, but the fact he's absent from so much of Season 4 just has to factor in here in some way. So yes, Season 4 Rick is one of the best, whilst also being some of Andrew Lincoln's finest work, like particularly his chat with Daryl Dixon after the Claimers incident, where I don't even think Rick himself can believe what he's just done. And maybe putting this outside of my top 3 due to the lack of screen time is incredibly harsh, but ultimately, I'm going to stick with it. So Season 4 Rick is fittingly coming in 4th.
This is what season.
Journey begins with
Coming in
Season
at third
2,
place is
The
Season
Farm.
2 Rick. Now maybe part of this is because Season 2 is my favourite season of television ever made, but I think this version of the character is truly amazing. This is a season where we delve into not the zombies themselves as such, but the weight of leadership and morals in a world slowly unravelling. The season trades much of the chaos of the apocalypse for the slow burn tension of survival,
Carla
grief, and
literally got
internal
shot 2
conflict.
times
And for Rick, this
and
season is vital
survived.
for his character development. Look, I'll come out and say it. The reason this season ranks so highly in this list is the Shane and Rick dynamic, which in my opinion is the very best in the entire show. As Shane slowly spirals into insanity, Rick holds on to his humanity, trying to lead by example rather than fear. But the brilliance of the writing lies in how Shane's descent forces Rick to evolve. He doesn't want to become Shane, but he must be willing to do the things Shane would do in order to survive. Not only does Rick lose his best friend, but a part of himself that night, and it solidifies his evolution into the man capable of making horrific decisions for the sake of others. On top of this, in this season, we see Rick get his first human kills in the episode Nebraska, as he's forced to put down Dave and Tony in self-defense, which are huge moments in the growth of Rick as a person. But I just love
they
how
had
this
it
season
coming.
forces Rick to step up. The prolonged search for Sophia, the growing tension
Sophia,
with Shane
bruh.
and her
The whole segment right there about Sophia, bruh. All that time she was in the barn. Like, that's the craziest stuff I ever watched. Watched ever. Like, wow.
Herschel's passive approach to the walkers, they all
And
change.
and he said stay like in the spot that or run like where the sun is at. Imagine she just want to stay there. Probably would have been alive to this day too. Stay in the spot that he told her to, bro.
Rick's philosophy, but when Sophia emerges out of the barn as a walker, Rick realizes he can no longer hope or wait for things to get better, and there is no more sitting on the fence. This is reality, and he needs to step up. The writers slowly peel away Rick's optimism and break him down as a character through intriguing dynamics and tough decisions. And the final moments of Season 2 mark one of Rick Grimes' most iconic transformations. After months of burden, criticism, and moral compromise, Rick is finished. He's no longer willing to listen, as he declares the group are now in the infamous Rick-tatorship period. Season 2 Rick might be annoying at times in terms of he's too lenient to Shane. He tries to please everybody and he's unwilling to make the tough decisions this world forces upon people. But this is what the whole season aims to do. It's a breakdown of Rick Grimes, the gritty reality of survival in the apocalypse, and this season is absolutely essential for his development. Rick is still learning about this world, and Season 2 is one of the best at asking the audience those moral questions. The slow erosion of his optimism and the breakdown of his hope is pure cinema, and I mean the man has a best friend plotting to kill him, a wife questioning his every decision, and a group that rely on him to lead. It's an overwhelming time for Rick Grimes as a character, and the performances from Andrew Lincoln and John Bernthal as Rick and Shane
ain't gonna lie to that, yeah. Shane and Rick was a good duo too, I ain't gonna lie. Yeah, one of the good duos in this whole season series, the whole thing.
Overall, Season 2 Rick has a believable arc which moulds him into the survivor he would go on to become. So for those reasons, Season 2 is coming in third place.
Season 1, yes sir. I'm about to say it gotta be Season 1 gotta be in 1 or 2. One of those. I wonder what's in one spot.
Coming in at second place, we have Season 1 Rick Grimes. Now, I'm sure some of you will be saying right around now, there's only 6 episodes in this season, and you've marked down other seasons for having Rick appear in a limited amount of time. But Season 1, for the most part, is entirely Rick Grimes. He's in almost every single scene, playing a pivotal role throughout. To start, Rick waking up in the hospital is one of the most iconic and effective openings in television history. Much like the audience, he's disoriented, confused, and completely unaware of his surroundings. We are learning of the apocalypse landscape, alongside Rick, and Days Gone By is one of the best pilot episodes ever made. It's a masterpiece in tension and horror, and I think Andrew Lincoln kills that overwhelming feeling of dread throughout the episode. We very quickly learned that The Walking Dead was a zombie show, sure, but the zombies actually play as just the setting for a family drama. Rick's motivations are deeply human. He's trying to find his wife and son, and it gives the audience a reason to invest beyond the zombies and the horror. We care about Rick Grimes not because he's tough, but because he's vulnerable at this point. And yes, this may be the weakest version of Rick Grimes, but it's also the most real Rick. This is him before the apocalypse gets a chance to change him. His eventual reunion with Laurie and Carl at the Atlanta camp in episode 3 will forever go down as one of the most beautiful scenes in television history. And I think I love this version of Rick because the story is entirely about him at this point. It sets up future storylines like his brewing feud with Shane, the collapse of the CDC, and the future of his marriage, but the storytelling is incredibly grounded. He drags viewers in, and it lays down the foundations for what will go on to become one of the biggest shows.
That's where we meet the whole crew, fucking Daryl, the GOAT.
Created. Rick represents hope, humanity, and resilience in the face of chaos, and his appeal goes beyond being the main character, as he's the emotional and moral anchor of the entire show. Rick's goal is simple: find and protect his family. That primal motivation is universal, and it drives his every action in Season 1. Along with this, Season 1 would go on to give us something to compare him to later on down the line. Seeing him change from Officer Friendly in Season 1 is part of the brilliance and magic of The Walking Dead. Rick in this season is compassionate, measured, and thoughtful. He risks his life to save strangers, he shows mercy where others wouldn't, and he tries to uphold some justice and order. His leadership feels earned and not imposed, and the poetic irony of him wandering around in a now lawless world in a sheriff's uniform is just symbolic. So yeah, Season 1 Rick might have not been biting out people's throats and orchestrating full-scale attacks on other communities, but this is the real Rick Grimes, before he would go on to be forever changed by the apocalypse. And it
just like the real him before he turned into, this is the real beginning, bro, of Rick journey.
would go on to set the standard for how we'd compare him throughout the journey. So that's why this version of Rick is coming in.
Alright, what we got first? Season 5.
Now, when I said Season 1 serves as the comparison to see just how much Rick has changed throughout the show, Season 5 is the other end of that spectrum. Rick throughout this season is a hardened survivalist, a man who instills fear into everyone
this is when the Terminus.
Rick is no longer naive or overly optimistic. He knows what the world is now: cruel, unforgiving, and dangerous, and his actions, whether it's executing threats without hesitation or leading his group, are all informed by hard-earned experience. For the first 4 seasons of the show, we'd seen a grounded man changed but not completely broken by his environment. But this season, Rick just lets loose. He's the top dog and no one can lay a finger to him. And the story shifts from a can Rick and the group survive to can they actually still function inside a community. This season forces questions upon us like, has Rick gone too far? And it's just altogether peak television. Rick's at his most powerful in this season, and the story is at its most intense period, culminating in one of the best seasons of television ever made. And through the character of Rick, the narrative evolves from a horror show to something almost Shakespearean in its moral weight, and the introduction of the Alexandrians help us to paint an idea of just how far Rick and our group have changed. From a storytelling perspective, Season 5 Rick Grimes is The Walking Dead. He's not just a man surviving anymore, he is the story. His internal and external conflicts define the season's structures, themes, and tones, and his very presence in this season drives the story forward, and Andrew Lincoln absolutely smashes it out the park. There are so many highlights in this season. Rick's killing of Gareth, the escape of Terminus, the execution of Pete. I mean, 90% of Rick Grimes' best moments from The Walking Dead all come from this very season.
Yeah, this is a legendary moment right here. I remember seeing this the first time, bro. Well, yes, sir. This is fire right here. And the walkers in the back, yeah. Got a whole fucking group. Survivors, bro. All goats right here.
has intriguing
And all they been
development
through, bro, they come together, bro, as a team. It's fire.
At the peak of his powers, he's dropping the coldest lines in fiction every other episode. I mean, it's just a generational run, really. And the season finale, Conquer, just puts the cherry on top. Having Morgan Jones arrive in Alexandria just as Rick executes Pete demonstrates to us all the evolution of his character.
Yeah, he a different person now. Not the Rick. The first day you met, he's different now.
Saw Morgan, he was a stable man attempting to save him. But fast forward to present day, he hasn't just embraced the environment, he's become the apex predator of it. This is a transformation that was exactly what the narrative needed. It gives us undoubtedly the coolest version of Rick Grimes, but it's also the most thought-provoking and intense version. Which is why Season 5 Rick will forever be my favourite variation of this legendary character. But with that being said...
Alright, y'all. That'll be it, y'all. What do y'all think is like the best version of Rick, the GOAT Grimes, or the worst version of him? Let me know. Hey, yeah, make sure y'all like and subscribe. Hey, yeah, easy out. Peace.